So narrative unraveled fairly quickly. Not quick enough though, but quickly as in like one thing led into another, led into another. And that is the lie that is the restrictions, COVID restrictions. They only could extend that for as long as they had. They got away with it for too long, I will say that, but it is what it is. Now, that is not going to stop them from trying to keep you under some sort of wraps depending on where you're at. President Joe Biden had said the other day that in the event that it's one of two options, is what they say. It's these perpetual sort of ultimatums. And that is you either get vaxxed, so get a jab, or you have to wear a mask until you do. As if, again, assuming that you're going to ever get it, as if none of us have ever made the decision. Regardless, we're just simply not getting it. Now, your vice president wanted to echo on that sentiment, and she says, with a picture of herself, get vaccinated or wear a mask until you do. Now, this ultimatum we've discussed before, it's a false dichotomy. It's a false choice. You have two things that are you're not forced to choose between, okay? But that's what they expect you to do, because they still have to string you along. And they wanted to make it seem, despite what the numbers and all of their restrictions and how all of them had failed for the most part in terms of they didn't get the results that they claimed they would get. A lot of, and I won't let them live this down. I know with a lot of folks, they're absent-minded, and what they will do is just forget about it. So, hey, they let you go do a little bit to what you were doing last time in the capacity, but prior to the pandemic, in the capacity that you were once doing it, at least somewhat. And a lot of people are just going to forget. It'll be like it never happened. I believe, as I've said, all these guys are criminals. Definitely the governors and the city, county judges and all of those that had the capacity to do some sort of executive orders and use aggression upon people in the process based on this pandemic, forcing them to shut down, all of those sorts of things. They belong in prison. And I will not be done with this for a very long time, despite a lot of people are going to forget about it. But they are going to string you guys along despite their utter failure and their lies. And this is one of those ways. Like, we want to make it seem as if we did, like, stuff that we did had something to do with it in terms of the numbers. So here's your ultimatum. You get the vaccine so they can just say, okay, it was the vaccine, which is what they're already saying. Or you get the mask so they can say, you continue to wear a mask so they can say, well, these numbers or lack thereof are representative of this policy. Now, not all states, of course, are going to listen to this. Not all businesses certainly are going to listen to this. I live in Texas, fortunately, and there are no mask mandates. Individual businesses will do what they will, but there are no mask mandates anymore, and there's no restrictions. People are going to do whatever it is they want. Some businesses, particularly the big ones that are subsidized by the state or work directly in correlation with them, are going to. Walmart to the world probably continue whatever the CDC says. That's what it'll be. Other ones will tell them to go screw themselves. We're going to do whatever it is that we want. But all this is they have to present some sort of idea to make it seem as if they had something to do with the general allowing of you going back to some sort of normalcy. It'll have to be due to whatever policy. It'll have to be due to whatever policy that they implemented. They'll never admit failure. They'll never concede that they got it wrong. I mean, as I've mentioned before, we already had examples of countries that had none of these restrictions, that never got the mountains upon mountains of bodies that they promised anyway, albeit Sweden, y'all forgot about. But at least closer to you, when you had the Floridas of the world, the Texas of the world, and they just said, you know what, go whatever happens, and you saw that you didn't get any of the doom and gloom that you were promised, they're still going to cling on to that narrative because the Faucis of the world will never admit they were wrong. The CDCs of the world will never admit they're wrong. And for sure, the authoritarian left and right, for that matter, which is basically the same thing in this regard, who y'all generally consider right wing or leftist. And a lot of them, they had the same positions as it pertains to the pandemic. They'll never concede that they got this shit wrong. Never. That's not an option. Them being wrong is not an option. It's you listen to us, and that's why we got the numbers. So when they fail, you got guys like Fauci, which doesn't even make sense. Remember, and I'm gonna really, this will be my last point in this regards, because I need y'all to understand how much of a sucker that guy is, because he would say that the places where you had, remember he was arguing with Jim Jordan about this, but you had the places that had the restrictions, more mask mandates, more lockdowns, strenuous lockdowns. And even if they were neighboring states, you saw a lot of them doing worse than the states that had lesser restrictions. And his answer to that was, well, it doesn't mean basically just because you have the restrictions doesn't mean they're listening. So he couldn't concede that, okay, those as pertaining to the numbers, there was no direct correlation. Fauci wouldn't concede that. His suggestion is that, well, those states, the people that are within them, no matter how leftist they are, simply aren't listening. Californians of the world, they're not listening. That's why their numbers are reflective of that. But at the other side of his mouth, he'll say that, well, the reason why we had basically a completely absent flu season is because of the wearing of the mask and the social distancing and stuff like that. So I'm like, which one is it, Fauci? Are they listening or are they not? But he gets to get away with it. Media, definitely from the mainstream side, they fawn over him. He's the darling. And I think that's why he wanted this can to be kicked down the road as long as he did, because he gets the interviews. He gets the front page of cover of the magazines, because everybody loves him and they listen to him because he's the supreme. He'll never concede that he got it wrong, even when he's contradicted himself. So he takes both. I guess that's how it works. You take two positions at the same time, you'll never be wrong. You always come out on top. But that's what this whole ordeal, and why whether it be the vice president or the president, why they're saying that. Those ultimatums are bull crap. Obviously, a lot of people are not going to listen to them, and that's their fundamental right to be able to do that, because you're not required. There is no rule, in terms of natural law, in terms of your God-given right, that requires you to get a jab or put a diaper on your face. That's just bull crap. But this is all trying to cover. It's a CYA is what we call it, because they're trying to cover themselves in their own asses, because the narrative has been long blown up. But they want to try to make it seem as if they had at least something to do with getting us to some sort of normalcy, at least in comparison to what it was before, because they'll never concede that they themselves got it wrong. The methods was ineffective, and everything that they had been stringing us along for the most part was just blatantly incorrect. They'll never concede that. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.